Hey everybody, welcome to the Under God Project podcast. Together we are accelerating America to become one nation under God again. For those of you who are new to the podcast, Under God Project is an initiative to invite God into our national identity. We have a series of experiences for families, congregations, elected officials, etc. We're going to tell you about all of that stuff on this podcast and more. But before we get started, do you think we should introduce ourselves?
I don't think they care. Honestly.
Don't you think? Yeah, probably not, right? Like, just too. You guys are too cool to go for that. So, you want to introduce us then?
Sure, let's do it.
Okay.
We are the Thompsons. There's a lot happening here. We, back at COVID, right? Do you guys remember COVID? It feels like so long ago.
It kind of does,
No.
yeah.
During COVID, we were hit with so many restrictions. We were confined, and we felt trapped almost. So we decided to throw caution to the wind, put our family into an RV, and go sail America in an RV.
Sail America. Yes, yes. We were definitely sailing
Sailing
America.
on the wind of the road.
The wind of the road.
Anyway, we were in search of the greater picture, the bigger picture. We wanted to find faith, family, freedom across America, and that's what we set out to do. And as we were doing that, we discovered quickly that the ideal image of faith, family, freedom was dwindling.
The American identity of faith, family, freedom, you're absolutely right, was just dwindling. It was being attacked. It was all sorts of difference, all over the United States. It was all over the place.
Yeah, so the idea is, what are we going to do now? You know, what can we do to change that? So we've created a lot of different things, one of which is the Under God Project, right?
Right.
And it's a really big deal. And anyway, lots to talk about there. But for now, what are we talking about specifically today, Henry?
Right. So today, thank you very much. So today we are talking about on this podcast, this discussion, just today, we are talking about God makes families, families make nations. God makes families, families make America. This is kind of like our fourscore discussion. We've had so much. There's so much involved into that, but so there's really a lot to talk about there. You know, one of the things that Jen and I have created is a nonprofit 501c3. It's called God Bless This American Family, and from that stems a lot of different things. It's an educational institution, and there's a lot of things that hang on that. But from that comes a lot of different principles and ideals. Excuse me. And one of those things is God makes families, families make America. Your family history is American history. So today's discussion is kind of wrapped up into a lot of those principles. But we're going to go ahead and kick it off. So here we go. God makes families and families make America. So in 1954, do you know where how we got under God into our Pledge of Allegiance?
You'll have to remind me. It's been a while.
Right. So this is actually really cool. I love this story, and I love really what it portrays, because it just truly reflects that it's families that perpetuate the identity of America, right? And it is really our responsibilities to perpetuate that throughout our culture, throughout America, throughout the rest of the world. So 1954, Dwight Eisenhower adds Under God to the Pledge of Allegiance. And the reason why he did that is because for the preceding 6 years, American families were doing that on their own. So without pastor, prophet, or president telling them to do so, some guy out of just a dad out of Chicago, Illinois, started inserting the words "under God" into the Pledge of Allegiance, and it caught on very quickly from the Sons of American Revolution, Daughters of American Revolution, Kiwanis Club, Lions Club, like all these other places just started picking it up and running with it and keeping it part of their identity. What was interesting about that time is, 1948 to 1954, it was post World War II. Right. And so at the end of World War II, war was over. Everybody's coming home, and everybody wanted to. My father was talking to me about the way that he would talk to his father, so my grandpa, about the war. And he said, Dad, why don't we talk about GI Joes and guns and all that stuff? And he just says because that's over, right? We no longer want to destroy, but we want to create. And so there was this whole revolution of creating the nuclear family and settling into the roots and the principles that that create things rather than destroy things. And part of that was at the same time, part of that was creating an identity. At the same time, the Iron Curtain came up, right? And what that meant was, Russia, USSR, a lot of those Eastern Europe entities started creating socialism, communism, a lot of the things that we really see today. And so they created themselves as governments, as countries across on the other side of the globe started diving further into the right way to do communism, the right way to do socialism. Americans saw themselves as something different.
Right.
They always saw themselves as a country that needed the divine, as a people that needed God, as a people that needed faith. Right. And it wasn't so much a doctrinal thing, not my religion's better than your religion and you should join mine and I should, not be around yours or anything like that. Not from a doctrinal perspective, but just from a national perspective, that we want to invite God into our national identity. Right. And so with that in mind, when just this dad out of Chicago started saying under God whenever he gave the Pledge of Allegiance, that's the reason why it caught on.
Right.
It caught on very quickly, and it was the right thing to do at the right time, and it was exactly what the country needed. It was an inspired thing. It was definitely a providential, divine thing to do, and but it didn't start there, right? He wasn't the first person to bring God into our national identity, right? We didn't start doing that then.
So it wasn't his idea initially, or he's just the first one that implemented it,
Right. Yeah, exactly. I wish I could meet the guy. I mean, obviously he's long gone, but
unfortunately,
what I've learned is that he was invoking the same things that were said about 80 years prior, and this is where fourscore comes in, right? Yeah, exactly. In 1954 marks 81 years since 1863. 1863 is a very interesting time, isn't it? That's the date of the Gettysburg Address.
Exactly.
Abraham Lincoln, in the Gettysburg Address, was the first one to utter under God with nation together. In fact, our country was never considered one nation until the Gettysburg Address. So Abraham Lincoln was looking to, we at the time during height of the Civil War, there's a lot going on. It's just extraordinarily layered. The nation is extremely divided, had this major identity crisis, very similar to the identity crisis that happened in 1954, 1948 during the World War, right?
Right, precisely.
So this massive identity crisis is happening. These big personalities were just crushing each other and all this other stuff. I mean, it's more than that. Now, I don't mean to kid about it or anything, but the Civil War was happening, so the Gettysburg Address was the first time where we had thought of ourselves as one nation. And Abraham Lincoln said in that Gettysburg Address, he said, "This nation under God shall have a new birth of freedom." And that's the line right there. This nation under God shall have a new birth of freedom.
So that's where it initially came from.
So hang on, let's get there, right? So
okay.
So never until that time was our country considered a nation. It was just a bunch of united states, and the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence declared those principles, and that was very appealing to become a state that had power, a state of the United States was different than just a country or a frontier space, right? It had the power, protection, and authority to act, to be part of a nation. So to have its own economy, have its own, be part of a currency, be part of a military, be part of something that gave them permission, power, and protection.
A little bit more authority too.
Correct. Permission, power, and protection, right? To to do everything that to be a successful nation, and so it gave them all this freedom. And so those grew very, very quickly. And so with all those different identities going around, that was part of the secession. Well, Abraham Lincoln, in that speech, after that speech, things really started to change. What's really interesting about that speech, is under God was not in. Oh, bless you.
Oh, sorry.
Here we go. You okay? You gonna make it?
Yeah.
Here we go. So under God was not actually originally in the text, right?
That's irritating.
You okay?
Sorry, it's very distracting.
It's okay. Sorry, I think I'm kind of good.
I have a cold. I'm sorry.
It's okay. So under God was not in the original speech. It wasn't written in his speech. He just said it. Right.
Well, isn't that interesting?
It is. Yeah, exactly.
He didn't initially write it down saying, I'm gonna make sure that everyone knows this.
Right.
He got that divine, what's the word? Revelation to him.
Inspiration. Right.
Inspiration, absolutely. Right. And he knew that that's something that the American people needed to hear. Not that he knew it beforehand, but definitely in the moment.
Precisely.
He's like, you know what? This is it. This is the moment. Maybe he even thought about it beforehand. And he was like, yeah, maybe I shouldn't say that. Maybe that's not exactly. And then in the moment, he's like, nope, time's coming.
That's exactly what I'm seeing as well, is that, bringing God into the fabric of our identity starts with families recognizing the opportunity to do so. Families recognizing the opportunity to bring God into the national identity when in the moment that he's asking us to bring it into it.
Precisely.
Right?
Not holding back. Right.
Exactly. So what's interesting is in the Gettysburg Address, he quotes the Declaration of Independence,
right.
Committed to the notion that all men are created equal, right? And so the Declaration of Independence more than talks about all of that, right? It establishes that as the principal identity of our nation, right? It's something that Abraham Lincoln was definitely invoking, definitely bringing in, like repeating word for word, right?
Right.
And the signers of the Declaration of Independence, after bringing God into, our national identity that way, in the end, they pledged to each other their lives, their fortunes, and their sacred honors, right? And so there's really a lot going on there, but that also was something that was. The Declaration of Independence was an amalgamation of sermons and preachers and sermons and ideals and a whole lot of other things. It wasn't just an original. This wasn't all like just from Thomas Jefferson's brain that was like, here we go, just write it all out, even though it was extremely divinely inspired. It was a series of divine inspirations that came through time, right? So Abraham Lincoln said 77 years ago, boom. He's talking about the Declaration of Independence, so 87 years prior to that. Well, it's interesting because 8 generations prior to that was the first governing document of our nation. This is where I think this story, is probably one of the most moving stories that I know of about bringing God into our national identity. So 1620. A group of Puritan separatists jump onto the Mayflower, right? So this is the Mayflower, right?
Yeah, exactly.
They actually jump on 2 ships, right? So it's the Mayflower and the Speedwell. Mm-hmm. They set out, and the Speedwell breaks down or is like sabotaged. Like, we're not really sure, but it comes back and forth like twice, right? Yeah. Either way, it goes back and forth twice.
Makes a couple trips first, and not to the Americas,
right?
Per se, but
like halfway, they're like a month into it, and they got to come back, and then they're a month into it, and they got to come back again because it's leaking. You're like, okay, whatever, guys.
It's broken.
It's broken. Right?
Anyway. It's like some of the naval ships that we have that are just consistently breaking down.
Seriously,
anyway,
yeah, exactly. How is it that you do that?
Story.
Right. So, so they come back, but in that process of back and forth, and this is one of the things I think is extraordinarily significant. They leave their pastor behind. So Jen and I are related to Pastor Robinson, and this is one of the things that we bring we forgot to introduce S'mores and Stripes.
Oh my gosh, you're totally right. I'm sorry.
Okay,
that is my fault.
That was your part. Yeah, but that's okay. Don't worry about it. It's okay. We're married, so it's our part, right?
So yes, Go ahead. S'mores and stripes. I'm saying it because I'm more excited than you are.
You are very excited.
And I failed to mention it. But S'mores and Stripes, that is our fun podcast.
Yes.
If this wasn't fun enough, we get more fun and crazy. Anyway, it's a lot about our adventures on the road, right?
Correct.
And everything that we are finding in America to prove that identity of faith, family, and
Right. We really have truly seen that America's identity is an identity of faith, family, and freedom. I mean, we have there's a lot of other F words we can have fun with, friends and fitness and food and all sorts of stuff. Yeah. There's just a whole lot of F words that are exciting, but,
funny.
Yeah. But so check out S'mores and Stripes. That's where we dive into a lot of different things. We talk about family history, how you can get through your family history and how you can connect yourself to your past and see that their legacy can be your quest, and like there's just a whole series of things that we can do there. There's a Sleepy Hollow and Headless Horseman and food. Oh, we have s'mores recipe.
Oh my gosh, for every episode.
Every episode.
There might be a couple of repeats because we have to get creative, but they're so yummy. And there's a couple of amazing ones. Even Andy came up with a good one.
You're talking about the Mount Rushmore one?
Yes, I am. Mount Rushmore.
We have a Mount Rushmore s'more. A Mount Rushmore s'more. That's the way that goes.
It's a s'more.
It's a Mount Rushmore s'more.
We gotta say it like that from now on, guys. It's a s'more.
It's a Mount Rushmore s'more. So okay, so back to what we were talking about though, right? So what were we talking about? Speedwell, Mayflower.
Yes.
So they leave
Pastor Robinson.
They have to leave Pastor Robinson behind. Jen and I are Robinson descendants, as well as Brewster and a couple of the people on the Mayflower.
We are actually related to quite a good number of them.
Like half of them.
I wouldn't say
a
half.
lot of them. There's like 20.
Maybe a quarter.
Maybe
a quarter.
It's kind of creepy.
I mean, if you think about that.
Yeah, exactly. It all comes to a pine tree and then goes back out from there. But anyways,
we are true Americans, though.
Yes, we are. I would say that we're related to the first American-born family.
Yes.
Right. That's a different discussion. 17 generations between now and the first American-born family. There's only 17 generations, y'all.
Only 17.
There's only 17 generations between now and the first American-born family. It's really very interesting. So the Mayflower leaves Pastor, President, King behind.
Yep.
Right. And there's nothing on that ship but families.
Yep.
Moms, dads that were like, okay, well, we've been looking for the promised land, so to speak, or realistically this new colony where we're going to set up shop.
They were told that they're going to go to Virginia, and that's where the King's Country was.
Precisely, yeah. So they were expecting to do that. They were expecting to go to the King's Country, and then, maybe generations later, they would establish their colony of New Freedom after they paid off their debt to get there. It was going to take at least 15 years, And so here they were. They broke down the ship twice. They came back. They're huddled into this tiny ship, or into this ship with more people than it can fit. And they get about halfway through the trip, and because of all those delays, now they're in storm area. Right. And so they run into this massive storm. And realistically, God gives them this storm.
Isn't it crazy to think?
Yeah. Right.
God gives us storms in life all the time.
Right.
It's nice to be able to look back though and be like, oh, that was on purpose.
Yeah, exactly. So this is one of the things that I think is probably the biggest miracle of our one of the biggest miracles of our country. Because if this didn't happen, then the next preceding things wouldn't have happened as well.
Exactly.
So they get this storm, and it throws them off course. They really don't know where they're going or what they're doing. And the hull, there's that beam that holds the hull together.
Right.
That cracks and just starts coming down. And now if that beam would have cracked further and caved down, the whole ship would have just collapsed. Right.
And everyone would die, everyone would drown, and it would not be good for
it would not have been good.
Anyone.
So the poetic thing is, and the divine thing is, they had brought with them something. Do you want to talk about what they brought?
I would love to talk about it
Okay.
because it's quite exciting, actually.
Jen likes to talk about it.
That's one of my favorite parts of the story, because the Pilgrims, for lack of a better term, man, my nose is killing me. I'm sorry. The Pilgrims were so devout and faithful to God that they brought their own printing press. And now printing press is weird because you wouldn't think that they'd want to print a newspaper quite yet. They don't have a colony set up. They just have them. Well, they brought this printing press, not to print a newspaper, but to print the Bible, to print their separatist Bible, because it wasn't the King's Bible. The King allowed them to bring their the King's Bible, but they knew they needed to print the Separatist Bible. And so it was important to them to be able to do that. So they brought their printing press, but with this printing press, they were actually able to use it. And they flipped the screw upside down, right? Or they
they
did
just
it
use
the
it in
opposite
reverse.
way,
Yeah.
right? So the opposite way. And this was able to brace the hull of the ship, brace that beam, to make sure that the beam didn't break and the beam didn't collapse on the boat, because they would have all perished. And we would have a very different story that we're telling today.
Right.
But they used the printing press to fix the ship and to successfully make it home. And like you said, God gave them this storm, and God got them through the storm. But they had to use God in order to get there, right? They had to use what God had given them and God had provided for them to use in order to get past this trial.
That's exactly is there's that the lesson in there is that the pillar of their faith, the meaning of their faith, they're bringing the printing press to print Bibles, right? Because their Bible was illegal, right, in their home country. They weren't allowed to worship on it. They weren't allowed to print them. They weren't allowed to, so they brought the very pillar of their faith, the embodiment of their faith, right, was then used to be their saving grace, right, as a tool for their what's the word I'm looking for? Not savior, the salvation. That was a tool for their salvation through that storm. So that storm knocks them off course.
Yep.
And it doesn't get them to the King's Country down in Virginia.
Right? But it still gets them to the Americas.
Well, that's exactly the point. The point is when they landed, the Puritans, Separatist Pilgrims recognized the opportunity when they landed.
Right.
They realized that they were outside of the King's Country, but they were right where God wanted them to be.
Exactly.
God had blessed them with that place that they had expected, perhaps even generations later, right now. God had given them that opportunity right now.
Yep.
And that opportunity, and so they recognized that. So in that moment, they did a little bit of exploration, but they didn't set foot off of the ship without first creating the first governing document of our republic, right? So along with the first American-born family comes the first governing document. That document is the Mayflower Compact.
Right.
And inside of that Mayflower Compact, the very, very first words, it says, "In the name of God, amen." Now, they use amen a little differently than we use it now.
Of course.
But essentially, it is invoking God into the identity of the colony that they are creating.
Yep.
And then from there comes everything good from our country, right? From Plymouth comes all the good stuff.
Yep.
Right? All of the invitations into it. So there's a whole history there that's completely different. All the good stuff comes from Plymouth, right? The other stuff comes from other places, but that's the time. And in that document, we get the Mayflower Compact. Right. And the Mayflower Compact is the inspirational document. From there comes the Connecticut Constitution, comes the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution of the United States. Like comes all these other different documents, including our founding documents.
But
right?
what was the Mayflower Compact? What was the point of it?
So the Mayflower Compact invited God into our national identity, invited God into the colony, and all of the people on the ship signed it.
Right.
Separatists and strangers, right? So saints and strangers, and so that meant people that were inside of the same religion, inside of the same sect, and those that were not, those that were there for the ride, right? And that were like, oh my gosh, we hit this storm, but they're like, oh, we've got a thing, we can use it. They all signed it, they all lived it, they all lived up to the compact that they made with God. Right. And so we have the same opportunity today, and we've been seeing that same opportunity since about every 40 all throughout our nation's history, and it starts with families.
Right.
Mothers and fathers, like you, like me, like us. We're the ones that begin and create our nation. From Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, all the way through to today. Your family and my family, we are the ones that create the nation, what she is to become, right? We are the ones that connect with that create the governments that God wants us to create. And God holds us, and I believe that God holds us accountable for the governments that he gives us to manage, right?
He absolutely does.
Right. So we have a great opportunity in front of us today and a great responsibility for us to do that. We'll talk about it in different podcasts and things. We'll kind of open it up a little bit, but what we have right now, I think it's really, really great to see that 2020 marks 400 years since that landing and since the signing of the Mayflower Compact. 2024 marks this 80-year fourscore thing that's going on. Now, keep in mind, it's a fuzzy fourscore.
Yeah, but it's 80 something.
It's 80 something, right? Like it's a fuzzy one, right? It's a fuzzy fourscore, but it's
7 years ago.
It's a fuzzy four. Okay, again, we're having fun with F words. So
fourscore, fuzzy. Anyway, keep going.
it's fuzzy, but it's there, right?
It's absolutely.
So that marks 2024, and then 2026.
2020. Okay, so remind me, 2024 is the fourscore of what?
Oh, great. So it's fourscore since 1950.
Thank you.
Four, right. So, and then 2026
Yep.
is our 250-year anniversary of signing the Declaration of Independence.
Precisely.
So we have this really interesting opportunity, and we have this really interesting time. And there's a lot of things that are happening relevant now, like that are happening this month,
Right.
with the Supreme Court, with it looks like some camera situations are going on here. With the Supreme Court, with all sorts of different changes that are actually opening up our religious freedom, that are opening up opportunities for us to take advantage of and invite God into our national identity. So that's why Jen and I say that we are accelerating America together with you. We are accelerating America to become one nation under God again. Every generation, every fourscore has an opportunity and has something that they can do that's unique.
Exactly.
In 1954, it was adding under God to the Pledge of Allegiance. In 1776, it was creating that document.
Yep.
It was creating a series of documents. And 10 years later, it's the Constitution. That's about 10 years later. And then, 8 generations prior to that, about fourscore prior to that was like the Connecticut Constitution time. There were some other things that happened in that time. There's a thing there.
Which is another thing discussion that you should definitely look into. But
right. There's other things that happened at that fourscore time, but the ones we're really highlighting right now are the 1620 signing of the Mayflower Compact and the arrival to Plymouth of the Puritans, those that sought God in the beginning, and those that wanted God to be in their national identity and protected themselves against a lot of things that would have pulled them into the wrong paths and all that other stuff. So we've got a great couple of podcasts to kind of walk through that and to introduce you all into what all those things mean to Under God Project and into God Bless This American Family. There's
lots more to go, but
there's really a lot to go. Yeah.
We've got a lot to talk about in the future.
We've got a lot to talk about.
For now, I think we're doing good. I think we can let these poor people go.
I think we can let these poor people go if we can get these cameras to work out for us.
Oh no, they're not working anymore.
Yeah, these cameras are killing us. I think the only one is mine.
Here. Hello.
Yeah. Hi. We're new to podcasting. I don't know if you can tell, but
we are getting there.
I think my computer is new to podcasting too. I don't know what's going on with it.
Your computer doesn't like podcasting.
Well, I'm sorry that. Well, okay. So should we do our send off?
Absolutely.
Okay.
But we wanted to say thank you for joining us. Please subscribe to whatever you are watching.
Yes. Okay. Now, if y'all are accessing it on the app, yes, we do have an app. Okay. You can find that on Google Play Store and on iOS. There's a lot of bits about it that walk you through the Under God Project. So welcome to the Under God Project family. Welcome to the God Bless This American family. And S'mores and Stripes is on the app. You should be able to, it should be pretty obvious, but it's in a group. You can go ahead and find it. It's there. Subscribe, because I think they get notifications when we kick out new things and those come out pretty frequently. We're not quite settled in how frequently they come because we're kind of inconsistent with some things, but
apparently our cameras are inconsistent, so
that's actually 90% of the problem. It's really trying to get our technology to work with us. As you can see, we're doing all this stuff live, by the way. Jen is our master engineer. She just click all just clicking through everything.
If it makes no sense, that's my fault.
If the picture doesn't line up, no. So let's get our send off. So our send off is 1 second. What was my button? It's my turn to push buttons. So hang on a sec.
He's all confused now.
Yeah, where are we? Oh, one button out. Yes, I did. I don't anymore, but maybe here we go.
You wouldn't know that he's the one that set this up.
I did. I set it up and I was like teaching her how to do it. And so, here we are. Okay, ready? We're going to do our sign
Let's go.
off. Okay. So thank you for joining us. Welcome to God Bless This American Family. Welcome to Under God Project. May God bless you.
May God bless America.
And may God bless this American family. Bye now. That was fun. Oh, I think the music was crossed over. Oh well. Y'all get it.